My name is Bruce Sullivan, and I'm going to talk a little bit this morning about financing for energy efficiency projects. And Jesse Holland is here from Energy Trust. He's going to do the second half of this presentation. I'll let you introduce yourself, Jesse, since we're being very informal this morning. But I'm kind of curious about where you guys are coming from. Would you mind introducing yourselves? Sir? Dave? Is it?
I'm Dave Surrey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a retiree, and I'm interested in solar powering my house.
Okay, good. Well, I'm sure you'll find something of interest here.
I'm Dan Sweeney. I am helping move a solar installer, a branch office here in Central Oregon, and I've been in renewables. I was formerly at Engineering and the Advanced Energy, the company here in Bend that used to build and design inverters, solar inverters.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
I'm Jan Rising. I'm part of the 350 Deschutes group that's putting this on. I've been doing registration, but you know, I talked to a lot of my friends, and well, not a lot, but a few of my friends who say, oh, solar, you know, putting solar arrays on my house, solar collectors are too expensive and right now, and the technology's improving, so I'm going to wait.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well,
I just want to hear what's going on.
we'll talk a lot about the first question and nothing about the second question.
Okay.
But you know, I've been using computers since 1985, and people always use that same excuse for not
Exactly.
getting a good computer.
Yeah.
And they say, well, you know, but in the case of an old computer, it always did what you had already been doing. It's just that you were giving up the new capabilities.
Yeah.
So with solar, I think it's a little bit different. Is you are having no capability to capture solar energy if you hesitate. And
Right.
if people really want to kind of move this thing forward, we really need more and more people to be the early adopters that are going to drive the market. And that's a lot of what this is about. And Mr. Videographer?
Calvin Mann. I have a company, vocalbooth.com. We manufacture soundproof rooms here in Bend, ship them all over the world. I'm a sponsor of the event, videographer.
Cool.
Leased a Spark electric car 2 years ago, and I've been
All right.
enjoying that. And
Very good.
it's a sports car because it's so fast, and it's
But
an
there's
economy
no
car.
ludicrous mode, right?
No, yes, there is ludicrous mode. There's a button you can push for super fast.
Super torque, huh? Excellent. Sir, we're introducing ourselves.
I gathered that. Poor time. My name is Russ Donnelly. Basically, relative to this conference, I was part of the working group that was helping to set up the climate resolution here
good.
that got
Excellent.
passed, thankfully. So that was just recently in September. So I've got a couple other colleagues here. So I thought one of the things we'll need is figuring in the future, as things progress, is figuring out how to provide access to clean energy and strategies to do it in a cost-effective
Well, the
manner.
whole second half of my presentation is for you, because it's a great way to make sure that everybody has access to these technologies. I don't think my slides are going to show very well here.
I'll just turn off the light.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You're not important, you're fine. Hopefully it'll show up on the
That's the way I
video.
look at it. I'll hide in the shadow. I've been in the energy efficiency business since the early 1980s, and I've been talking about some of the same things for the last 30 years. Okay, and you'll see that at least one of these financing mechanisms was established in 1978, and yet it's very little used. And so I think one of the things that I have to keep doing is talking about this. I only have 30 years left to talk about and get people on board with these things. The obstacle or the barrier to adoption of renewable technologies has nothing to do with technology. It's not a technical problem. We know how to build massive wind turbines. The biggest turbines now are in the 4 to 5 megawatt range. I'd say 10 of those, and you've got a nuclear power plant. 100 of those, and you have a nuclear power plant. And that way, you've got a huge capacity to build these things. We have rooftop solar. I recently saw a report from the National Renewable Energy Lab that said that we could meet 40% of the electrical needs of the United States if we just put solar panels on every rooftop that technically could produce electricity on that rooftop. It had to do with orientation and shading and that kind of thing. They were not talking about policy or financing or any of those things, but it is technically possible to supply 40% of our energy needs from the rooftop without, right now. So it's not a technical problem. It is a money problem. And that's what we have to talk about this morning. How do you look at investments? How do you look at investments in energy in a way that encourages people instead of in ways that discourage people? I'm going to say a word. I will say it only once because it is the death knell of people who are trying to encourage energy efficiency. And it is the word payback. If you say the word payback, you have immediately created a negative impression in the consumer that says, gee, I have to wait. Americans do not like to wait. We don't wait. There's a whole raft of psychological research from children into adults that says if you offer somebody a reward now and offer them double the reward a short time in the future, 80% of the people will take the immediate reward now, even though it's less than the reward that they could get by waiting some amount of time. And they vary the amounts of time. Immediate gratification is the only way to sell anything. And I think those of us in the energy business have failed really to grasp this and really follow through with it. So I'm going to show you how to do that. The problem is that the costs come up front and the benefits kind of accumulate over time, okay? We want to bring the benefits into the immediate future. And here's how you do it. Let's take the example of a mortgage. When a mortgage banker kind of evaluates you as a person, to get a mortgage loan, right? They'll underwrite you. And they use this formula: principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And this is supposed to represent your ability to pay those expenses and to afford the house without going into default. But there's one huge factor that they ignore, and they've ignored it for a long time. What do you think that is? What are we talking about? Energy. Energy bills come due every single month, just like the principal, just like the interest, just like the insurance. In fact, energy is probably greater than the insurance. It's probably, in some cases, equal to the property taxes, and yet it's a factor that mortgage lenders and all lenders will ignore. So we need to bring this into the equation. We need to make sure that people know that energy efficiency really is its own power. You don't have to take money out of your pocket or out of your savings account to pay for energy efficiency. It pays for itself. And if you do it right. And we're going to talk about how is it that you do it right in order to make this kind of equation work out. So let's look at an example. Here's a mortgage example, or a kind of a house example. This came from a real house. Energy improvement investment is going to cost you $2,500. You are going to borrow that money at a 5% interest rate. I bumped this up a little bit to be conservative, but mortgages are going under 4% right now. So this would be somewhat conservative. So you're going to pay $17 a month to borrow that $2,500. Now here's the kicker. Your monthly energy savings will exceed the monthly payment. Bingo. Free improvement. Immediate profit of somewhere in that range. Now this was an Energy Star house. Right now, if you build a new house in Oregon, your house needs to be weatherized. It does not achieve the cost-effective level of energy efficiency and must be improved, which is very difficult to do in a new house or a new building of any kind. You want to go all the way to the cost-effective limit of the energy improvements from right during construction. And so by not spending the $2,500 to make that house energy efficient, a little bit more energy efficient, then you are missing this opportunity. And this is an opportunity, again, that pays for itself. In fact, it gives you a little bit of a profit. That's an easy example. That should be a no-brainer. And yet only 30% of the builders in the state are building their homes to Energy Star standards. And by the way, if you do that in most parts of the state, you get some kind of an incentive from the utility industry or possibly tax credits from the state. So, the economics are even better. This is if you pay the entire cost of it. Let's look at another example, a little bit bigger. You wanted to, take an existing house and add insulation. You wanted to maybe, this probably wouldn't replace your windows, but it's going to improve some major improvements in your house. Maybe buy you a new furnace. Okay? Again, 5% interest rate. You're going to pay $40 a month for those improvements, and you could save $50 to $60. Again, this is an example from a real house where we analyzed the energy performance of that building, did the improvement, saw the energy model gave us the savings, and we could move that forward. So using the energy model, you're able to identify where is the limit that you can go. How much can you spend in order to get all of that money back? Now, if you're a person sitting in this room, you probably would be willing to actually spend a little bit of money. You might be willing to go over that limit and actually make an investment for the other benefits that you get from energy efficiency, the climate change benefits, the comfort benefits, the health benefits, all those other things. We're not talking about those things. We're just talking about the money, the dollars, okay? So there's your second example. There's your profit. Well, it turns out, what is the capacity for an average home to adopt this technology or adopt this idea? Well, here from Freddie Mac, it says that the average home in America spends about $2,200 on energy. $2,200 a year, that's $183 a month. That is $38,000 worth of capital that they can access to improve that home. $38,000. I took a standard house when I built my house a couple years ago. I made it a zero energy house for about that much money. So you can basically take a house, and depending on the size of it, of course, but see, when the size means the bigger sizes mean bigger energy use, so that you also have some more capacity to buy it. So you could basically, using this formula, really target zero energy housing and really not pay for it, because the energy pays for itself. So how do you figure this out? Well, one way is to go to your spreadsheet. Every spreadsheet program, Excel and all the others, has an amortization function or a payment function. And you can make your own little spreadsheet and say, if I have a loan at 4% and I'm going to spread it out over 360 months, that's 30 years, I can save this much money, and that means I can borrow this much money. That's a really easy kind of calculation to make. By the way, the secret to making this work is the really long amortization period, 30 years. If you take virtually anything and spread out the payments over 30 years, the monthly payment is very low. But you can play with those numbers and figure out exactly, if you're into a commercial loan, you probably aren't going to get a 30-year mortgage on a commercial loan, a 30-year amortization period. So what I did is I just took some of the key numbers out of that table, and just to give you an idea of kind of how that lays out. So, on the low end, if you wanted to just do a little bit of an improvement, $2,000 a month, a year, you wanted to make your house Energy Star, new construction, it only cost you $10 a month to do that. I don't see that as a barrier. But if you tell the person that's moving into the house, oh, it's going to take 5 years to pay back, oops, I said it again.
Yeah.
See what it does? You've taken an immediate benefit and turn it into a deferred benefit. Don't defer the benefits, make them immediate. And you can go all the way to $50,000. That could be some major improvement, in a commercial building, new HVAC equipment, new refrigeration equipment store, something like that, and it just keeps going on and on. So you can create for yourself this little calculation that helps you, I think, properly assess the benefits of your investment. This is an investment. So how do you do that? Who is going to give you this money? Well, in 1978, there was this thing created at for the secondary mortgage market called energy efficient mortgage. And that's what happens for an existing, for a new home, energy efficient mortgage. Energy improvement mortgage is the same thing that will happen for an existing house. The idea here is that they're using the extra buying power of energy savings and investing that buying power in the house. Now, you would think that lenders would love this. Gee, I get to take money that that person was spending on their utility bill, and I get to loan them more. Bigger loans mean bigger interest payments and bigger profits. Why don't lenders grasp this kind of opportunity? I don't know. So anyway, so the energy efficient mortgage is something that can happen during a sale of a house. It can happen pretty much any time. So let's look at who uses this. A buyer can use it. They can qualify for a larger loan. That's kind of how energy efficient mortgages work. There's this thing called a debt to income ratio. You can't exceed, I think it's 35% of your income can't be in mortgage and interest payments, that PITI thing. So they can get a bigger home, they can borrow more money, they can make their home more comfortable, and they can save money from the day they move in. They don't have to wait 5 years to save money. If you're a remodeler or you're refinancing, you can get all those benefits, plus you can make improvements in your home. A lot of older homes, for example, need new windows. New windows aren't really a great energy saving measure, but they do save energy and they qualify for all this. It also makes your house a whole lot more comfortable, and it increases the value. It increases your equity. So if you're a seller, you can do this as a part of the selling process. From your end, you can invest that extra money. Your buyer gets the higher mortgage, right? But they benefit because they'll have the lower energy payments, energy costs, right? So if a seller does it to make the property more attractive, they're going to pass those benefits on to the consumer, the buyer of the house. They're going to benefit, and therefore the buyer is the one that's really going to enjoy the benefits of this.
So what does EIM stand for?
Energy improvement mortgage.
Got it.
And it's really the same mechanism, just new versus existing homes. So these mortgages are offered by virtually every government agency that buys mortgages. Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, the Veterans Administration. There's even a local lender, Umpqua Bank, that has a program based on this principle. It's called Green Street. And you're not going to get a 4 or 5% loan from them. That's a little bit higher interest, but the same principle will apply. All of these things require an energy assessment of the property. If it's an existing building, you're going to have an energy audit. Somebody's going to measure your house. They're going to look in the attic and see what the insulation is. They're going to test the ductwork for leakage. They're going to test the building for leakage. And so it's the results of that energy analysis that are used to predict the energy savings that you're going to get. That's the key number. Based on the savings that's predicted, you can choose the measures and the cost of those measures that will equal the amount of money that you have to work with. In other words, this identifies the payment you can make, and you can work backwards then to how much money you can spend to install those measures and still break even, and still be zero or have a profit. And if you're an altruistic type, you can actually exceed that a little bit, and maybe you'll spend $4 or $5 a month and really expand the capacity of that savings. Well, there are several different ways that you can measure this, and one of them is called the Home Energy Rating System Index, the HERS Index. This is a national program. It's used in a lot of different places to identify how efficient the home is. And if you do an energy analysis of the home, it'll say your home is 130 now, and if you do these improvements, you'll bring it down to 65, and the dollar savings will be this. Okay, so that's a pretty good way of documenting for the lenders what you're going to be doing. We have a homegrown version of this too called Energy Performance Score, and this one is a little more explicit about the savings. It puts it right up there at the top. There are two sides to this sheet. We're trying to really work with the real estate industry to use this as a tool during the sale of a house, either a new or existing house. So let's look at a few of these things. It really zeroes in on the cost of that building. What is it going to take to for all of the energy costs of that building? Space heating, space cooling, water heating, lights, appliances, everything. Of course, this is an estimate, and it's based on kind of a typical family. And very often you have houses that have 3 bedrooms, but there's only 2 people living in it. And so their cost could be even lower. And this is a number that you can then use to compare, and this one too, this is the energy score. You can use this number to compare 2 buildings. Now what you can't do with either one of these measures right now is you can't see what the house would have been if it had been built conventionally. And so that's the kind of missing piece here. But the energy analysis will do that, the underlying energy analysis. So you can talk to your auditor, your energy expert, and they can tell you what the current kind of conventionally is, and then you can calculate the savings. Now it also talks about the carbon footprint. There's some specifics about the house itself. I'm hurrying up now. There's another thing that is really critical, it's really key, and I think this has tremendous power to allow people to finance these kind of projects, all the way from improving buildings to improving, just about everything. It's called the Property Assessed Clean Energy, and it works like this. You can finance the entire cost of the improvement. You can have repayment periods of up to 20 years. The payments are not tied to the owner. They are tied to the property. When the property sells, the buyer assumes the liability and also the benefits. So this allows you to say, I'm going to make this investment and somebody else is going to pay for it. Well, kind of. But they also have the capacity to pay for it because their costs are far lower. The loan balance carries forward. Generally, these are made with the property taxes. Yes?
These PACE programs, are they available in every state?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
They can be used for both residential and commercial products. I'm running behind, so I have.
That's okay. Sorry.
I'm stepping on Jesse's time here. So you can get money from commercial lenders, private equity. The key to this, I'm going to see if I can play this real quick because it really explains what PACE is. If I can. I forgot my speaker. Okay. You can't hear that, so I'm going to move on. I'm sorry. You can go to this website, though, pacenation.us, and you can see that little video. It's a really great capsulization of the function of PACE. Basically, what's happening is that the local government sets up this system. So far, those states in dark green have enabling legislation at the state level. Okay, the only local government in Oregon that's done this is Portland, and they've created a PACE program strictly for commercial buildings. Okay, this is the part that I wanted you to hear because it's something that the local government can do in order to allow financing for all these projects.
In doing the research for the background on the resolution process, the lack of that as an option was, I thought, disadvantage it could be a disadvantage for this community as opposed to others. And so it doesn't come from the state. It can be individual cities. You said enabling legislation.
The state enables it.
What does that?
But the state, there has to be a law that permits the cities, the local governments to do this.
Do we have that here in Oregon?
Yes. Oregon has the enabling legislation, and Portland has actually set up a program. Now, that's probably the obstacle for PACE, and what we'll see, going forward, if you were to look into this, is that there's a bureaucracy. If you try to get the city of Bend to adopt this thing and set this up, it takes staff, it takes lots of work. They're going to resist this, and so many of the smaller cities have had trouble adopting or creating PACE. But it doesn't have to be a city, it could be a county, it could be a intergovernmental
It's
organization.
whoever's doing the property tax, which here.
Well,
we-
the property tax, it works through the property tax.
Right.
Right, so the payments are made with your property tax bill, and there is a lien on the property. So it's not only the kind of bureaucracy that you have to create, it's the fact that lenders sometimes find themselves taking second position, because property taxes, if you default on a loan, property taxes are gonna be in the first position. Now, that has been probably the biggest sticking point, and I don't know enough about this to say how much that's been worked out, but there have been people working on that second issue, either by getting lenders to agree to take second position, or getting the governments to take second position, so that the lenders don't have to take as big a risk. Okay?
So as far as you know, I mean, from the residential side, that was my understanding, is that Freddie Mae and Fannie, those guys all opposed that, put up obstacles to pace moving forward, at least at the residential scale, because of this whole positioning thing, so you're not sure if that's been resolved?
Well, no, it has at the national level.
Okay.
And I don't know all the details, but I've been
So those,
researching it a little
they were
bit.
the big obstacle, was these federally
The
guaranteed.
federal agencies have now removed those obstacles. And they have said, this is how you go about achieving it. I can't say the details, okay? So the other thing, PACE, I think, has huge potential here. The other thing that is happening in some areas where what I would call enlightened utilities are doing essentially the same thing. They have this thing called on-bill financing, which means that the person can borrow the money from a commercial lender. The utility says, I will collect the payments on your utility bill. And it kind of works the same way. What's interesting is that you can have zero down or low down payments. You can also have bill neutrality, so that the customer sees the same bill that they had before. So in other words, they're using that difference between the savings and they're using the energy savings to make the payments, but they aren't exceeding that. So the customer is paying just the same amount of money that they always did. In other words, it's a free improvement. People don't like to say that word, free. And again, the liability stays with the building. It passes from owner to owner to owner. Therefore, you don't have to worry about this, being a problem when you try to sell your property. So what we're talking about are basically ways that energy savings can pay for improvements. Financing is really the problem. It's not a technical problem. It's a financial problem. You can get an analysis of your project that will give you this number, the savings number that you can use as your investment, and then you can figure out, a way to actually borrow. You can borrow commercially if you want to. That works too, as long as the numbers work out. Or for people where the numbers don't work out, we hope that maybe the local government or the utility will step in and provide, kind of be the banker here. All right, we're going to take questions later. It's Jesse's turn now. Set up.
That's great, Bruce. I like that information. Maybe I'm just bored of my own presentation.
Here we go. I'm going to get this going for you if I can figure it out.
Yeah. Do you live here locally?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I heard your name many times over the years of working with this program. Hi, you guys. I'm Jesse Holland with Energy Trust of Oregon. I'm with the existing buildings program, and I'm the Central Oregon account manager for that program. So my presentation is about exactly that, the existing commercial buildings program and the incentives that we offer to various businesses as they do energy efficiency upgrades. So let me see if I know how this works. In case you don't know about Energy Trust of Oregon, it's born out of some Oregon state legislation that says all the privately held electric utilities in the state have to pay into a public purpose fund. And that would be Portland General Electric and Pacific Power, and then we also have Northwest Natural and Cascade Natural Gas participating voluntarily. It serves about 1.5 million customers of all those utilities, and the goal is to provide access to affordable energy. And so we help customers identify, evaluate, and prioritize energy efficiency opportunities. Energy Trust has a number of programs, renewables programs for wind, solar, hydro on the small end of all of those things. We've got, and then the other ones are energy efficiency programs. So there are residential programs, existing homes, new homes, products, and then there's the commercial set. So of course, like I mentioned, I'm within that. Why invest in energy efficiency? This is just a real quick math look at why you would want to do this. So say you install energy efficiency measure Y, and it's going to save you $1,000 a year on your energy bills. So how much, okay, so and your company has a 5% profit margin. How much product would you need to sell to achieve that same $1,000 effect to your profitability? I'm sure you guys can do math. And the answer is $20,000. $20,000. That's $20,000 worth of product that you don't need to sell to be able to get to that same level of profitability. It's going to get you there $20,000 more quickly, or it's going to take you to that $1,000 more profitability without selling that $20,000 worth of product. And there's many other benefits that come along with energy efficiency when you implement. So it's going to bring, of course, lower energy costs. But when you create a more comfortable environment within your facility, you're going to have a lot of other effects too. So if you have a retail environment and your customers are more comfortable, they're going to be willing to spend more time in your facility, and then they're going to end up spending more money. Or if you have workers within your facility, they're going to have greater worker safety, improved morale, higher productivity. They'll be more engaged. And then, of course, you can also utilize these measures as towards your sustainability goals, to be able to market your organization as a sustainability, for the things that you do towards sustainability. So we help in a few different ways. We help identify what the projects are going to be. We help connect you with a network of trade allies so you can work with contractors who know how to install these energy efficiency measures. And then we also offer cash incentives based on how much energy savings are associated with the project that you would install. Real quick, I just want to give you a glance at the sort of the constellation of the commercial programs. So this is us in the dark blue here. This is what we'll be talking about. If you're talking about a building with 2 or more residential units in it, campus living, affordable living, assisted living, there's an existing multifamily program that would go through. Or if you're in a commercial building that's adding square footage or building a new building, there's also a new buildings program that can go through. They offer a wide variety of assistance. Some of it is early design assistance, so you can get money to help with that design aspect even before you're anywhere near the point of actually building. There's also, it's not represented up here, but there's also production efficiency programs. So if you're doing any type of production within your facility, then we've got a production program that can help you with energy efficiency in those types of buildings. And then if you, of course, you see solar there in the center, so it's recommended that you would implement energy efficiency measures initially, but you can always layer solar on at any point. And then there's also the Strategic Energy Management Program, and that's taking things to more of an operational and behavioral level of change within your organization. That program puts together cohorts of people from various organizations and does workshops on how to implement that type of operational and behavioral change to help save you energy in that way. So, existing buildings. We help in all these different types of buildings. And it's not limited to this list, but those are some of the major ones. As I mentioned, if you're not adding new square footage, it's not a multifamily residential type of place, or you're not doing production manufacturing of some type, then it would come to the existing buildings program. So we pretty much cover all types of commercial buildings outside of those uses. Excuse me. And through our program, we have 2 different pathways to incentives. On the left here, vertically, we're talking about the standard incentives, and then on the right, we have a custom process, and I'll dive into each of these a little bit. The standard incentives are basically covered through this brochure here, so I just want to hand these out for anyone who's interested in having one.
I got one of
Yeah, I
those.
think you might have one of those. Here's one for each of you. So this is the most accessible pathway to incentives. These are the standard incentives. And basically what that means is all the math has been done on these measures. Oh, that does not show up at all here. I can barely read it. So basically what it means is if you're eligible by way of having the correct utilities, which is what the top bullet says there, then, and you also purchase equipment that's, the requirements are spelled out within each of those tables throughout the brochure, then you're automatically eligible. And through the standard process, you can purchase, install, and then apply for the incentive afterwards. So through the standard pathway, we don't have to get in front of the project at all. You just verify your eligibility and you're good to go. There are some really good incentives in there. Some of them are not quite so motivational, but some of them, there are some really solid incentives that would be good enough motivation, I think, to bring you to that energy efficiency decision.
But the last bullet said apply in 90 days and install. Is that before the install or after the install?
After the install.
After the install, okay.
Within 90 days after you've installed it. Yeah, sorry, that's not clear. So yeah, like, again, that's towards the point that we don't have to get in front of the project with the standard incentives. You can, if you're eligible, install and then apply within 90 days. And if you miss that window for some reason, we can still talk about it and we can likely give you an exception for that. Oh, there it shows up.
Sun's going behind the cloud.
Yeah. So just to talk through some of the various categories. Sorry, I've got this kind of phased in here and I don't really like how it shows up. So we definitely have lighting incentives. We've got measures that apply to heating and cooling. We have things for lodging, food service, and grocery. We've got incentives for heat pumps, for installation, also for data and IT centers. So those are some of the broad categories. We do have a section for compressed air also. So if you take a moment to kind of review that brochure later, you can see those bigger categories and go through them a little bit more in more detail. I did want to talk to the premium gas ones as we're going into the colder time of year here. Within the premium gas, HVAC, and water heating section, there is warm air furnaces, radiant heating, domestic tank and tankless water heaters, boilers, pool and spa heaters. And so essentially, if you know what the upgrade is that you want to implement, then this is a good place to start. Go to energytrust.org/bring-us-in, and that can kind of get you started on the whole process. I also live here locally. You can consider me a resource. If you have any questions or need any help with this process, feel free to reach out. My card is in the back of those brochures. So you can just shoot me an email. I can get you the application and kind of spell out, how to interact with it, and give you the short list of the documents that you would need to provide if you're applying. So then I want to talk about custom incentives. So that's basically for any energy saving project that you may be implementing within your facilities that's not covered through the brochure. It's generally going to require a technical analysis or some type of engineering study. And basically the rate at which we pay on those custom incentives is 25 cents a kilowatt hour saved plus $3 a therm saved up to 75% of the cost of the project. So there can be some very significant incentives on the table if we are able to identify an energy saving project for your facility that actually offers that level of savings. We do often see 50% of the project covered, 60% up to 75% of the project covered. And some of these facilities are large enough they're doing a $100,000 upgrade just to their controls and HVAC for their building. And there are cases where we're able to hand them $75,000 towards that project. So, as I mentioned,
Was
very,
that 25 cents per kilowatt hour for the first year? Is it the first year of kilowatt hour savings? Or is it the 20-year life of the project? Or how, what do you use?
it's based on the annual savings.
Okay, got it.
So this next slide will help us kind of understand a little bit what we do here. So the first thing that we do is we identify an engineering firm that would help us. They do the analysis, they come out, do a walkthrough, and put together what we call a technical analysis study. And then we review that. The engineers on our team will take a look at that and do some back and forth with that engineering firm to say, okay, we don't know how you got to this number, all right, this one seems inflated, and arrive at a figure that everyone can agree on. And then based on the savings within that technical analysis study that's been approved, then we can make the incentive offer right here. So once we reach that point, then you have the green light to go ahead and implement the project. And then after the project's complete, then we'll move into the payment phase. We do a post-install verification in some cases, and then do a payment process. And then it's just a check direct to you, whoever it is who's installing the energy efficiency measure. Okay, let's see. If that wasn't clear, pre-approval is required. We do need to make it to that incentive offer before you can move on the project. Otherwise, it's considered to be what we call free ridership. And that's not a good use of your money, ratepayer money that feeds into these programs. You can contact Energy Trust, or you can go to this website, or you can ask me questions about this. As I mentioned, my card's in the back. Feel free to reach out. I'm here to help you. And so from here, we've got a lot of different sort of examples of different measure sets, different building uses, and the ways in which we can help within those. I've also got some success stories, but we've only got about 4 minutes left, so we don't need to go through all the rest of this bullet by bullet. I'm curious if anyone has any questions about this program. Does anyone have any questions about specific measure types? Yep.
I don't know if this is the right question, but what's the level of participation in the program here at Bend?
That, I don't know how to quantify the answer to that. I've been here for over 2 years working in this role, and I work with a wide variety of organizations. Mostly what I work on is the custom side of things. So those standard incentives can come through our program without me ever even knowing about it. Maybe facilitated through one of the food service equipment distributors in town, or lighting distributor. So I don't know how to quantify that. We've got.
This is one, if the city wanted to know, where would they go to find that?
I'm sure Energy Trust can put together some numbers for them, and I can help facilitate that conversation.
Okay.
We do have therm and kilowatt hour goals for all the utilities that we serve through these programs. And just as an example, we hit the goals for both Cascade Natural Gas and Pacific Power, which are the 2 utilities that apply to Central Oregon, in 2015. So we're at that level where we're hitting the goal. So we have the level of participation that we're aiming for. Of course, more is always going to be better here.
Do you tend to see more new, I mean, in the projects you're involved in, do you tend to see more new or more retrofit, or is it an even split in the commercial side?
So the new, if I'm understanding the question, then like a new buildings project would go through the new buildings program, which is a separate program.
Okay. All right.
So I'm not really privy to that, but they have increased the number of account managers that they have in town through their program. They've kept very busy, so I think that, of course, during this time where it's a little bit of a boom period for Central Oregon, there's a lot more new construction, and they've been really busy with that.
I had a question for Bruce. So you didn't talk or mention like third-party financing like Solar City is. Are those guys in Central Oregon or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sunrun and Solar City. Sunrun is, I know. Mike, do you think Solar City is?
I don't know. I mean, they've sort of shown their face around a few times, but not really.
Yeah. But the principle is the same. I mean, they're using this idea of capturing all of the incentives and the savings in order to pay for the system. So the customer is basically you know, they benefit, but the benefits to the customer, I think, are quite a bit lower when you go into a leasing arrangement like that. So most people prefer to purchase like solar equipment, for example, outright, and therefore they will gain those benefits, all of the benefits, and they won't be kind of shared with the leasing company. The other group that does that kind of thing are energy service companies. There are some, they used to be called shared savings. You run into those a lot, where a company will come in and they'll pay for the retrofitting of all the lighting fixtures or whatever, and then they'll take the savings to pay for that, and maybe they share those savings with the building owner. Again, the owner is kind of not able to capture all of the savings, and that's the trade-off that they make when they kind of bring in this other financing group. So, you know,
Just a lot of, to put in like a solar system, it's a pretty large upfront capital. So it just, if someone doesn't have, the ability to put that capital, or doesn't have the ability to finance, incrementally finance, it's just an option. It's interesting, I think.
it is, and a lot of people take advantage of that because they just don't have the upfront capital to do it. And a lot of those programs are targeted for public agencies, schools even, where they don't really have a lot of capital to use.
Well, and also they don't have the tax appetite of the government
Right.
agency, right? So they can't take advantage of the ITC or the MACRS depreciation.
And that's a really good point, because a lot of times those, for solar anyway, where there are tax credits in play, the investor gets the tax credits, and that makes it very attractive to them. I don't think I'm going to talk out of school if I mention that there's an organization that's really found a way to use that system. It's Pacific Crest Housing. They build affordable low-income housing projects, and they've made buildings really super energy efficient, lots of solar, and they've done it largely, and I've talked to Rob Roy about this. He's one of the principals there, and he's willing to share his ideas about attracting investors and bringing them in and getting the investors get the tax credits. But then they also, part of their model is that they pay the utility bills of all the residents in their apartment buildings. And so it's the managers that get the benefits of savings over time. The residents get low rent and they get comfortable billing, but it's the managers that get the actual dollar energy savings, and that's how they pay for all of these really high, I would say, advanced energy saving measures.
They're also accessing a completely different set of tax credit benefits because it's focused on affordable housing for their projects that are not available to all projects.
That's true. They get access to the low income that other people don't, but they're a part of that puzzle is also the standard tax credits too.
Right.
So, but you're right. They've managed to really put together a nice package, and they've been very successful financially. Yes.
Do you have any idea what the operating and maintenance costs are of a solar system?
Pretty much nothing.
How do you know if all your solar panels are working?
There are a couple ways. Every solar system that's installed, now they come with online monitoring.
Okay.
So you can see what the performance of the building is, or the performance of the array is. And the way that solar systems are set up is they're set up in strings, right? Like batteries. So in order to get to the high voltages they need, and if one of those panels goes down, the whole string is affected. And so you very quickly see a huge drop in production if you have a serious problem with your panels. Even on
That's the way you would know, you
that-
would see your.
you can see your.
Now, what about if you need to replace your roof and a solar panel, what's the life expectancy of solar panels?
The warranties on solar panels are 20 to 25 years. A lot of them were exceeding that in terms of real life, the ones that are that old.
If you have to
Before
replace your roof,
before you install the panels, you must have a 20-year roof life left. That's usually a requirement of the incentive programs like Energy Trust. So, and you wouldn't want to do it if you had only 5 years left on your roof, you definitely want to replace the roof at least underneath the panels, so that you didn't have to do that. Does that make sense, Dan?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, a lot of the installers are going to microinverters. So basically it puts a little inverter in each panel. That way you don't have this problem if one if one panel goes out, you don't lose that whole string. But that's the other option. That, I know a lot of installers in the Portland area really embrace the microinverters.
Sort of like the Christmas tree light syndrome.
Yeah, yeah.
Routine clean and dust and all that type of stuff.
You can clean them. I did that this year. I got up on the roof and I hosed it down and I brushed it off and there was still dust on them, and I didn't really see any difference in production. Generally, if you have a fairly steep roof, they will clean themselves. My problem is that I have a 3 and 12 roof pitch, which is fairly flat. It's about 11 degrees, and so I get a lot of accumulation. Whereas you have a steeper roof, it's going to tend to clean itself off a little bit better. Yes.
Are panels normally warranted or guaranteed, do they ever fail?
Everything fails. I think, you know.
I mean, I know they do eventually, but I mean, if they fail before they're
I believe the panel warranties are 20 to 25 years, and they're solid state devices. They're very heavily tested. I'm working on my second solar system now, and you know they've been up there. In the first 4 years of my other house, there was never a problem. So I don't know.
If the installer puts in a tier 1 panel, you know, meaning one of the top brands of panels, you're pretty safe. Like, I know that, like, Solar World's out here advertising their tier 1 manufacturer, so, yeah.
But is the efficiency, you may have already addressed this, but is the efficiency greatly improving in your panels, or are there new technologies involved, or what's happening with panels?
It's inching upwards. The panel efficiency has been hovering around, what, 20% now? Something like that. And there are different technologies for use. And the standard panel is called a single crystal silicon solar panel. It's got about 20% efficiency. That's been inching up. The biggest improvements or the biggest drops in cost have not been in the panels themselves. We've kind of reached, I think, a plateau on how low the panels will go, but it's the balance of the system, the inverters, the racks, the business practices of the installers. Those kind of things are the places where we're starting to see the most improvement or the most reduction in cost. So there is still some, probably, you know, the prices will still come down a little bit, but as the prices come down, the incentives also come down, because the state tax credits are a little bit slower to react, but the Energy Trust reacts pretty damn quick. So, you know, when they see the price of the system start to drop, they drop their incentive. And so, you know, you're not really going to benefit financially a lot by waiting. In fact, again, the state is the one that's kind of slow to react. They're, you know, I don't know, have you heard anything about them changing the solar tax credits?
No, I mean, the business energy tax, what was not the business, the Red Sea is gonna expire at the end of next year, isn't it?
The state, is 18?
Yeah, the state level, that's what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
18, I think
So they're
it's
trying to
18.
align it with, I mean, it's one of the priorities for OSIA in this next session, is to make sure that it's extended parallel with the federal one.
But it could very well go down in that process.
Yeah.
From $6,000 today to something less. So, you know, my advice is don't wait. It's not, you know, for like your computer analogy, you know, there's no real good reason to wait when you can start enjoying the benefits of that right now.
Anybody comment on community solar? Has anything been said about that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, the rules are being written right now, so the rules are before the PUC, and they're not required to be out until July 1st of next year. So if that's something that you're interested in, we will probably be doing something at the Environmental Center to kind of communicate to the community what's happening. Oregon Solar Energy Industry Association is actively following that course. So
So are these all utilities that are gonna be sponsoring this, or I'm talking more like something that is not linked to utilities, but is like community?
no, the utilities will be involved probably in buying the power, but the people who develop the projects may or may not be the utilities. I think we may see both. That's sort of my understanding, but I think all that's to be determined.
It's tied to the new bill.
Does everybody know what community solar refers to?
So just a quick example, my house has too much shading, so we have perfect southern exposure, but to qualify for the Energy Trust incentives, if there's too much shading, so the sort of financial picture is really different for us, so not put solar on our roof. Community solar would allow us to invest essentially the same way, but in an off-site system, located somewhere else where we would subscribe. It depends on how the system gets worked out, but in theory, it would be the same price points, the same sort of price package for me, but I would be investing off-site. So I could still get solar.
Could you
apply
still
it-
get the ITC and the depreciation?
I would still, in theory, I would be available for, as a homeowner, right? I'm talking as a homeowner.
Yeah, right.
I would still be available for the same set of incentives and tax credits for offsite and the same credits on my bill. That's the concept I'd like to see in the system. Whether we get there or not is another story. And utilities aren't necessarily thrilled with that model.
That's
In
what
fact,
I was
utilities are pushing back on net metering in general
Yeah.
across the country.
Of course they are.
Yes, sir. Last question.
How does the billing work? I mean, if you're in the process of creating more energy than you're using, and you're sending it back to utilities, do you get a credit from them, or how does
It
it?
depends on your utility, which one are you hooked up to?
I don't know, I mean,
You in the city of Bend?
yeah.
Okay, so it's probably Pacific Power, which is good for you. Pacific Power's net metering program allows you to, they have a bi-directional meter, it's called. It will record in both directions. So when you're generating more electricity than you're using, you're sending it back to them, they'll give you a credit on your bill. And that credit builds up. Now in the summertime, you're generating a lot more energy than you're using. In the wintertime, you're probably using more than you're generating, so you get to use that credit. The credit is rebalanced every March, so they reset you to zero. So you don't get to carry them forward indefinitely, you only carry them forward till March, which is a good time of year to be zeroed out, and then you start again for the year. So you get to build up your summer to use the following winter. Anything in excess of any credits in excess of what you actually end up using, they donate to their low-income program where the people that can't pay their electric bills get it.
And is that where the term net zero comes in?
Yes.
If you hit March and there's been no,
Right. That's kind of why they call it net. I just call it zero energy because net zero is hard to understand. But yeah, that's exactly, you're netting out over the course of the year. You're averaging over the course of the year, you have a zero bill. Now, you still have to pay a monthly service fee. It's $10.77. So that's for billing and that kind of thing. Now, the publicly owned utilities, co-ops, Mid-State and Central Electric, have much different programs. So if you're living in those areas, you'll have to kind of do some investigation. They generate, some utilities don't give you, what Pacific Power is doing is essentially paying you the retail value of those kilowatt hours. And other utilities want to keep track of that and pay you the wholesale value, which is a third or 40% of it. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.